Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy, back at it again with another Minecraft video, and today is a very special video. After several weeks of long deliberations, I'm finally ready to tell you guys which school I'll be attending in the fall. And so these past few weeks I've been doing a lot of self-reflecting and thinking about what I want to do in the future. And as of today, I am officially committed to a school. So if you haven't already, please go check out my college decision reaction video where I talk about all the schools I applied to and my decisions to them. I'll leave a link in the description and a card in the corner somewhere. And while I'm at it, I'll pull a Graham Stephan and ask you guys to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. So as a quick refresher, I applied to 26 schools. I was accepted to 17, waitlisted at 5, and rejected from 4. So for all of the other videos of this type that I've seen, people bake cupcakes with their schools on top of the cupcakes, but I don't have the ingredients to make cupcakes, nor do I know how to make cupcakes. So I'll just put up pictures of my schools somewhere on screen and walk you guys through my thought process as I narrow them down. So as I mentioned earlier, I was fortunate enough to be accepted into 17 schools, and all of these schools are really amazing in their own ways, but unfortunately I had to narrow it down to only one school in the end. First up, we have Salem State University, Curry College, and Merrimack College. These three schools are local schools, which means that a lot of the students they get come from the area. And something that I wanted in my college experience was the opportunity to meet people from around the world, and I knew that some of my other options would give me better opportunities to do that. Next is Keene State College. So I didn't have the opportunity to tour Keene State, so I was never able to really form a connection with the campus. But from my understanding, since it's in New Hampshire, it's going to be pretty cold there during the winter, so I think that was one of the big things that turned me away from it. Next is Wentworth Institute of Technology, which was another one of my safety schools. So I did have the opportunity to tour the colleges of the Fenway, but I didn't really like the feel of their campuses too much. And the cost of tuition was going to be a lot higher than some of my other schools once again. Then we have Suffolk University, which was actually the only school whose accepted students day I was able to attend, but they didn't have the major that I was interested in, so yeah. Then we have UMass Amherst, which is the flagship state university here in Massachusetts. And for me, the two biggest things about UMass Amherst were the fact that it was so far away from everything else, because since it is in Western Massachusetts, it's going to be basically in the middle of nowhere. And also it is a state university, so there's going to be thousands and thousands of students. And I didn't really want to be in an environment where I could feel like I would be lost in the crowd. Next, we have Bentley University, which offered me a really generous scholarship. And Bentley is really good for certain programs like business, but I'm not going into business. And for the things that I am interested in pursuing, I think that Bentley is going to be more limited than some of my other options. Next up, we have Stony Brook University, which is on Long Island. Stony Brook also gave me a really good scholarship. And while I did get into the school, I don't know if I got into the specific program I was interested in because I never received formal confirmation on that, so I assume I didn't get into that program. So yeah. Next up, we have George Washington University, also known as GW. And I think for GW, the honors program seemed really interesting. And I think that Washington, D.C. would be a really cool place to live in. But ultimately, the thing that I had to consider the most was financial aid. And again, GW was going to be another one of my more expensive options, which ended up being the deciding factor, I think. Then we have Brandeis University. So like many of my schools, I never got to tour Brandeis, so I didn't really know too much about the school, to be honest, when I was applying. And I know that Brandeis is a good school, but I don't think that they had the program that I was looking for. They also gave me not a lot of money. Then we have Northeastern University, which is the school that I toured the most amount of times. I think I probably went on 3 or 4 official tours, which goes to show that I really like the school. I think the campus was really nice and the co-op program seems really interesting. But the deciding factor, other than the fact that the financial aid package was less than ideal, was that I got into another school that I liked even more, which was Boston College. Something that I liked about Boston College over Northeastern was the fact that the campus felt very campus like. I think that the Boston College campus was really beautiful. And honestly, the financial aid package was pretty good for Boston College. But the thing that I didn't like was the fact that you can't switch out of your major for the first year at Boston College. Because even now, I'm not super sure that the things that I want to study now are going to be the things that I still want to study in college. So I think that I would want to be able to have that academic freedom to pursue different things in the event that the thing that I initially decided on isn't the thing that I want to continue studying in the future. And with that, we are down to our final four, which is where things started to get really difficult to decide between. First off, we have Tufts University, which is a super amazing school. Honestly, I didn't think that I was gonna get into Tufts to begin with, since I didn't tour and I didn't do an interview. So I was really surprised, to say the least, when I found out that I actually got into Tufts. And I think that Tufts is such a great school for all of my different interests. So I don't know if I've mentioned this on my channel before, but for a lot of my schools, I applied as either linguistics or international relations. But for some of my other schools, I actually applied as biology because that's another thing that I'm interested in. And I think that Tufts is a really great intersection between those two different disciplines that I'm interested in, because it has a really good biology program and a really good international relations program, which is something that I really liked about it. So if I didn't get into the last three schools that I got into, I probably would have definitely ended up going to Tufts. But I did end up getting into those last three schools. And those last three schools, in my opinion, were a lot like Tufts, but taken up a notch. I think that I would have had all the same opportunities at Tufts, at those other three schools, and other opportunities in addition to that, which for me was the deciding factor ultimately. And with that being said, we are down to the final three schools, which are Columbia University, Brown University, and Stanford University. So obviously these three schools are some of the best schools in the country and some of the best schools in the world even. And so that meant that the decision between these three schools was very difficult for me. Because at that level, all three schools are top-notch in basically every aspect that I could look for, which means that ultimately it came down to some finer points that I used to differentiate between the different schools. Because all three of these schools are amazing, and I definitely could see myself being really happy and thriving at any of these schools. But nonetheless, I ultimately had to decide on one of these schools. And so the first of the three schools that I had to unfortunately let go of was Brown University. So this decision was especially hard for me because I really like Brown. Out of all of the 8 Ivy League schools, Brown was definitely in my top 3 favorites. And when I got in, I was super happy, as you guys could see in my college decision reaction video. There are so many things that I like about Brown. They have a really beautiful campus. The open curriculum is just amazing. And Providence is only around 2.5 hours from home. So if I really wanted to, I could visit home on the weekend. And when I toured Brown, everyone there seemed so happy, like everyone was smiling. And that was something that really appealed to me because I could also see myself being really happy there. And between the 3 schools, the financial aid packages were so similar that tuition wasn't really something that I was considering between the 3 schools. So something I learned about Brown later is that since Brown is in Providence, and since Providence and Rhode Island as a whole is not very big, Brown is like the thing in Providence and in Rhode Island, which means that a lot of things are inward looking. And that means that a lot of opportunities are centered around Brown, and there are less opportunities outside of the school. And that's not to say that I would have disliked Brown. I think that I totally would have been happy there and had the time of my life. But when it comes to these 3 schools, I really had to look at the smaller things when I was trying to decide between the 3 of them. And so when I was looking at the smaller differences between the 3 schools, Brown just didn't come out on top. And so now I am on to my last 2 schools. At the beginning of the video, I talked about how I didn't have the equipment nor the skills to make cupcakes for this video, but I do have something else. So right here I have some VR headsets. One of these is Columbia and the other is Stanford. And so I don't really know what the point of the cupcakes is, but I have these to differentiate between the schools. And yeah, So the decision between Columbia and Stanford was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life because these two schools are obviously world class and you can't really go wrong with either of them. And so I've spent the last month doing a lot of self-reflecting and trying to envision myself at either school. And so now I'll walk you guys through my thought process for each school. So first I'll talk about Columbia. So Columbia is in New York City. It's in Manhattan, which means you have access to all kinds of different opportunities in and around the city. You have all those summer internships that you could take part in. You have all kinds of amazing people that live in New York. And since it's such a large city, you'll never run out of things to do. And Columbia's campus is also one of the most beautiful campuses in the whole country. And Columbia's dorms are some of the best dorms that I've seen out of any college. One thing that I like less about Columbia is its core curriculum, which is actually something that I prefer about Brown with its open curriculum, because I want to be able to study what I want to study. And with the core curriculum, everyone has to take certain classes, which I do see the benefit of that, but I would prefer if I were able to choose my own courses to begin with. I never actually had the opportunity to tour Columbia, but from what I've seen from the virtual tours and such is that Columbia's campus is super nice. And I think it really says something if you can like a campus just from seeing it online. And you also have to be wary of how hard Northeastern winters can hit, because while Columbia isn't as far north as Massachusetts is, the winters in New York can still get pretty bad. But when it comes to schools of such amazing caliber, I don't think that potentially bad weather is going to be a deciding factor. Then we have Stanford University. So I think that one of the biggest differences between Stanford and all of the other schools that I applied to is its location. Stanford is in Palo Alto, which is in California, which obviously means that the weather is going to be very different from here in New England. Having warm weather all year round is something that's really appealing to me, but I don't think that would make me lean toward it too much over Columbia. Something else that I really like about Stanford is its academic programs. Although Stanford is known for computer science, it also has really good linguistics and international relations programs. When it comes to linguistics research in particular, I think that Stanford definitely wins in that regard. Another thing about Stanford is its campus. Like Columbia, I haven't had the opportunity to tour Stanford since it's so far away. But again, just by looking at the virtual tours, I could definitely see myself having a good time at Stanford. Its campus does look very different from Columbia's, but I think that the campus's architecture and its layout is something that's still really beautiful. Another thing that I liked about Stanford is its quarter system. So most schools use a semester system, but Stanford uses a quarter system, which means that the terms are shorter and there are more of them. And that's appealing to me because it means I can explore different interests quicker because I'll have the opportunity to take more classes in a shorter amount of time. And since there isn't a core curriculum like there is at Columbia, it means that I am more free to explore my interests, given that I fulfill certain requirements, of course. And with all those points being said, I'm sure you guys are really curious to find out where I decided on in the end. But for that, we are going to need to change scenes. So as I said at the beginning, as of today, I have finally committed to a school. And so I think that calls for a little transformation, which is why I have my Sailor Moon shirt on today. So let's get on with it. So after many weeks, I am very excited to finally announce that I will be attending Stanford University in the fall. I think that deep down, I always knew that it was going to be Stanford. And I think that between all of my options, Stanford is definitely the perfect choice for me. Something about that school just clicked with me right from the moment that I got my decision. All of the other Stanford admits that I've talked to have just been some of the most amazing people I've ever gotten to know. And just today we had virtual admitted students weekend, and I feel like I just fell in love with the school even more. I think one of the things that really set Stanford apart from Columbia was its location. Columbia is right in the heart of New York City, and I'm not exactly sure if I would have loved the constant hustle and bustle of the city, because I'm not someone who does super well with crowds, and Stanford seems like the perfect size for me. I know that Stanford is considerably farther from my home than Columbia would be, but since Columbia is also pretty far from my home, in terms of how often I would be coming back home to visit, Columbia and Stanford are basically the same distance. And basically across the board, Stanford just edged out Columbia, which is why I ultimately decided on it. I know that things in the world seem pretty uncertain at this point, but I really hope that I'll have the opportunity to attend Stanford in person in the fall, because there are just so many things that make me excited to attend Stanford, and I can't wait to experience them. And to all of the other members of Stanford's class of 2024, I'm super excited to meet all of you guys, and I can't wait to spend the next 4 years together. And that's about it. It is finally official, guys. I will be attending Stanford University in the fall, and I could not be more excited. So if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe for some more great content. Basically, if you guys want to see me do Stanford related content, maybe even meeting RP Park, you guys gotta like, comment, and subscribe so that I can beat the YouTube algorithm. And that's all for today, so I'll see you next time. Bye!